Ask an employee from Area 51 anything at all. I worked at Groom Lake, or as it's more commonly known, Area 51, between 2008 to 2011 for the United States Air Force. I currently live in New Zealand. I'll answer the questions that I can, but as you can imagine, showing you images would more than likely lead to jail time for me, and I'm not willing to take that risk. You're just going to have to take what I say for word. I have no reason to lie about what I'm going to say. Well, there are no ancient aliens, or extraterrestrials, or whatever the hell the History Channel keeps saying. Now, I never saw the whole base. I was only allowed to visit a few areas. Prison time was threatened if we stepped out of line, but the pay was incredible, so I stayed. To put it short, here is what I know is there. Stealth aircraft and drones. I personally helped work on some experimental tests of it. What else do I think is there? Probably something involving archaeology. One of the hangars had a lot of bones and pottery and cogs and stuff. In one of the offices, there were a lot of pictures of the Nazca lines and ruins in Bolivia. Nothing Mayan, but lots of Patagonian shit. To be fair, I did not learn much except for the stealth aircraft. Imagine the current drones we have now, but not even visible from the ground, and faster than some of the fastest commercial jets. AI is a serious possibility too when it comes to this stuff. How these stealth drones tie in with archaeological finds is a mystery to me. Something I really couldn't understand as well are the amounts of regular passenger planes we head in and out constantly. Not much. Like I said earlier, it was over the course of a year, and my group got the winter off. We all got paid lodging at Las Vegas, but we were warned we were under surveillance. We had groups too, forgot to mention that. 12 people in each group. Our rooms on the base were actually built under the hangars, and they were pretty comfy. The thing I remember the most though was just this constant underlying paranoia and skepticism of everyone I knew. It's probably mostly because our society put such a scary veil of Area 51 as this hidden secretive government thing, so it's easy to get worried. I think a lot of other members in my team, hell, even my boss, had that same underlying paranoia. Did the government develop a working cloaking device for the visible spectrum? How far ahead of modern tech are government computer systems? How many gigs of data can dance on a radar screen? They are trying to make one work, but bear in mind that trying and succeeding are two different things. I've seen some different experiments done to make it work. We actually have a dynamic camera/screen system working for a while, but you could still very clearly see the object by just looking in its general direction. The government computer systems are probably 2 years ahead, so by a little bit, but not by much. Hell, the ones we used to design parts of the aircraft ran on Windows 7. I think the actual hardware specs were pretty advanced though. I'm going to tell you what I've heard. Mind you, this is just a theory, based off of what people at the base told me during lunch hours and conversations I overheard during the course of my stay. This is in no way absolute fact, and I may be wrong. The government does not want singularity. Their idea of the singularity first involves making sure that everyone is constantly suspended and reliant on media. The general public will work less and less, with jobs eventually being moot. Money does not mean what it does anymore, and the world economy is messed up, with everyone owing everyone tons and tons of money. So the United States producing quality goods is not a concern anymore. Once you have people in that constant stream of media, they are much easier to control. I'm not saying that this is New World Order stuff, but I do think that the United States government is trying to give people what they want: happiness and complacency. The neurosurgeons, from what I understand, were working on the effects of media, subliminal messaging, and accessing the nervous system. Anyways, once the US has everyone in their little media cocoon, I'm guessing they'll probably try to start some stuff using stealth drones. Does the government have technology advanced enough to bring about the singularity if it were all released now? How advanced are government AI programs? For your first question, all I can say is that I think within the next decade, we will almost definitely see ourselves getting doused into media even further and further. As for the second question, they are probably at toddler level intelligence. general identification, facial identification, memory recollection, efficient decision making. It's really incredible. It's funny you mention that, because Men in Black was one of my favorite movies. To be fair, from what I've seen, the government seems very interested in neuroscience and its political and commercial applications. When you say no aliens, can you say with 100% certainty the government was not in contact with any, / somewhere in a separate part of Groom Lake, / they have never visited us? Just curious if you mean simply you have seen no proof of contact. I am saying that I am probably 98% certain that there are no aliens at Area 51. There are engineers, archaeologists, and a handful of other specialists there too. Lots of neuroscientists and technicians there too. Well, look at it this way. People like movies, books, and video games. They expect their lives to be like a TV show in several ways. If you could, you would probably just love to sit on your ass and do nothing but watch TV all day and maybe go for a nice drive, wouldn't you? Hell, look at iPhones and how often this generation uses them. The amount of media time we use, or relaxation time if you prefer, has just been increasing further and further. It's a good possibility that at some point we'll be delved in it practically 24/7. And how do you think that will work? I am a former security officer of a mining corporation in Lincoln, Nevada, and I have been to Area 51 without any security passes many times on casual visits. Most of the employees tell me the same thing, that they are testing drones and other specialized aircraft. I don't know of anything extraterrestrials or any underground base, and plus, all the UFOs reported in the area match up with descriptions of man-made aviation, and before this info, it's pretty much common knowledge if you live in Nevada. Honestly, the way drones are getting, I think they could destroy the world easily. A fleet of those is like a nuclear bomb, without the nasty radiation side effects. Biological stuff, not that I know of. Chemtrails and zombie viruses or whatever may very well exist, but I'm only saying what's going on from what I've seen, and from what I've seen, there are none. I don't have much time, and will not be able to continue this thread, but I hope others keep it bumped and spread the truth for me. The area around Area 51 has nothing to do with aliens, and everything to do with human experimentation. In the early 20s, breeding programs were begun deep underground, selectively picking features that were suited for better night vision, mobility, and the like. Many of the breeders' and failures, ones that were born average, were used for various testing of nerve agents, etc. As time has gone on, the basis is still the same, but more genetic engineering has occurred, as well as viral development. In the mid-40s, they began to breed for deep space travel flight, for future planetary exploration. The breeding cycles were long though, between 13 to 16 years from birth to breeder, so the process was slow. Recently, however, we have sent at least 22 subjects for attempted colonization of planets within our solar system. We have a population of approximately 45,000 living underground we use purely for testing purposes. Aliens, by the way, do not exist as far as we are aware, by the way. I am sorry, I don't have more time to give details, but I feel better now telling someone what we've been doing for nearly 100 years, and we know we can never really tell the truth, because the morality of our jobs would never be accepted. Truth is stranger than fiction. Back in the 90s and into the early 2000s, I used to work for a large defense contractor, and I worked at this secret military installation in Nevada, known colloquially as Area 51. Most of us who worked there just called it Dreamland. What exactly is it that we did there? Nothing especially interesting. I won't say what I did exactly, but I will say I saw a lot. First, what you have to understand is, the exterior of the facility itself is so secure that about 1/3 of the guards don't know that the other 2/3 exist. There are redundant layers of monitoring and surveillance systems that will put Fort Knox to shame. But on the inside, if you have access to main test labs, you can move about almost everywhere, and I've done a lot of exploring that has gotten me into some trouble, while other times, no one really seems to care all that much. I read a thing about Disney World once, about how it has this vast network of underground tunnels and structures that keep everything running on the surface. it reminded me a lot of Dreamland. It was actually eerie how similar it was. There was a ton of maintenance, facilities, electrical, plumbing, transport, etc. People with no military background all the time to do the actual mass production stuff. Mostly manufacturing top secret materials like radar absorbing material for stealth planes and missiles. The truth is, Area 51 is nothing more than a chemical manufacturing plant. They do some stuff like test helicopters, and they do security drills in the event that there is some kind of intrusion. They also test some other planes, but there is no Aurora plane, or aliens, or flying saucers, or anything like that. We do have the largest repository of palladium ingots in the world. They are stored in some kind of tanks, filled with mercury or something like that. It's supposed to be for use in high-tech batteries, but actually, it's a money-making scam, similar to gold hoarding. The materials produced at Dreamland are pretty amazing. For example, they have to make windows on a stealth bomber that can withstand huge and sudden changes in temperature, pressure, humidity, and radiation from the sun, hundreds of times, that also deflect radar waves without interfering with the ability of the pilots to see out of the plane and resist the growth of ice crystals. This is not an easy material to come across and has to be engineered at the atomic level. I don't know the science behind it. I'm not an engineer, but I know they require massive facilities with huge numbers of people to operate and maintain it to produce a very small quantity of the material, which then has to be quality controlled. Sometimes they accidentally produce a bad batch of 1,000 stealth plane windows and have no way to dispose of them. They can't just put them on the curb for the garbage man to pick up. Instead, there are several methods they use to dispose of unwanted material in bulk. 1. The most obvious is burial. They dig a giant hole in the side of a mountain with explosives, pack up the unwanted material in barrels or crates or whatever, then collapse the entrance. 2. Recycle. Not all materials can be recycled. For example, some of the titanium components manufactured for things like helicopters, if they don't pass quality control, can't be melted down. It costs more to melt them down than it does to just make new ones, because supposedly, they are designed to be difficult to break down, but I think it's just more money-making scams. 3. Plasma. Some stuff like trash, wood pallets, tampons, etc. would cost too much to bury or recycle, and it's very difficult to compost it. So they put it in some kind of electrical arc furnace, and it atomizes the trash into methane. The only thing that's left are little bits of metal and glass, which just gets thrown into a pile outside, literally by the lake bed. 4. And this is the most controversial one. Fire. According to our contract, if we die on the facility, then we don't get a burial. Our corpses are not permitted to leave the facility for security reasons. My guess is that a spy might try to smuggle something out of the facility in a dead body, so they eliminate that possibility by preventing the dead from leaving. And there have been deaths at Dreamland, about 30 to my knowledge, could be more. Some of them were your typical victims of industrial type accidents, crushing injuries, poisoning, electrocution. There was once a helicopter crash, people getting run over by trucks, etc. So what do they do with the body? The policy is to burn them. Not in a crematorium. They just put you in a body bag, bring you outside, usually at night, put you on a pile of sandbags, douse you with diesel fuel, and light you on fire, until there's nothing left but ashes and the fillings in your teeth. But it's not just people that are disposed of in this way, and this is the real reason why Dreamland is top secret. It's because it violates almost every single Environmental Protection Agency law on the books. If at the end of a production run, they have a few hundred barrels of some highly toxic chemical that is the waste or byproduct of the material that was manufactured, they won't store it or recycle it. They will just burn it, and you will breathe it in, 100 or 1,000 miles away. They don't care at all. They know it causes cancer and birth defects and neurological disorders and kidney failure, etc., etc., etc. They just don't care, because they are accountable to no one, not even the president, because even the president does not know they exist. Now, I am not an environmentalist, but that's still really messed up. Working at Dreamland is pretty crazy. We get to see a lot of really cool technology that is on the bleeding edge. I guess it might be like working for Google, except there are no windows or beanbag chairs. I see little flying drones buzzing around outside, smart surfaces, various robots doing menial tasks, like cleaning toilets and bathrooms. They aren't going to hire a janitor to work minimum wage at a top secret military testbed or making pizzas. They contract a lot of companies outside to build these crazy robots to do all these chores, and they cost millions. They spend billions of dollars to try to keep the number of staff down, but sometimes it is unavoidable. We had an issue with sanitation for a while, so they overhauled a lot of the workspace and production facilities to be self-cleaning. We also have Roombas and robot floor scrubbers all over the place, like it's the Death Star from Star Wars. And again, this was in the early 2000s, before these kinds of things have started to become common. My guess is they have replaced all these custom robots with commercial ones, so they are easier and cheaper to maintain and repair. But I would not be surprised if the higher-ups are still giving out no big contracts to their buddies to do all this custom stuff that the commercial industry could do for much cheaper. They process all these chemicals for stealth planes, missiles, drones, radars, etc. But they also make drugs too. Yeah, that's right. They make a drug similar to crystal meth to include in a special ration for certain soldiers on certain missions. They take it in the form of a pill, and it keeps them awake and alert for hours, without the buzz or the druggy feeling. Supposedly non-addictive, but I don't buy it. Just another hustle. You will never hear about it, because these drugs and their use in the military are also classified. I hate spreading rumors personally, but I am pretty close to certain that this stuff causes permanent brain damage. Actually, there's a bunch of general managers who run each department, but the whole place is owned and run by a hidden branch of the US Air Force. All the military really does is keep it secure, but the corporate guys, the scientists, and the blue collars are all private citizens, but they ultimately answer to a military-style chain of command that overrides their corporate bosses. The contractors get all of their orders from the Air Force to build or produce whatever they need. One more thing I wanted to mention before the men in black show up at my door this morning, because it's such an insane hassle to commute out to the Groom Lake facility. First, I drive to a commercial airport and have to park, then walk to a tram stop where these electric carts pick us up and take us directly to the plane on the tarmac. We don't go for the regular terminal. Do a security screening, which for each person takes 2 minutes minimum, and there are only 5 screeners for a plane of 200 passengers and board the plane. Then we wait for all the assholes who need to stand around doing stupid stuff with their luggage to sit down. Then we take off and fly for 20 minutes. Then we land at a runway on Groom Lake itself. Then we take a bus from the runway to our respective work area entrances, get security screened again before we enter the foyer. It would take up half of the workday just to get to our actual job, so they have a sort of hotel where we work 3 to 5 days for 8 to 12 hours. It depends on what your department is. Then go home for a few days off, but you are usually on call for 24 hours a day. A guy I know once got home, only for them to call him within an hour of him being home to come back, and it has happened to him many times. But the pay is obscene, plus benefits and healthcare, and all the little perks like the company car, computers, phones, pretty decent cafeteria food, not all the time though, and special tax rebates. OP here. I don't know what you mean by only seeing the first level. There are multiple floors in some of the dugouts and tunnels, but there is no Area 52, which is actually a joke some of the people have talked about at Dreamland. Ghost stories about a Native American burial ground, or the hidden hangar that supposedly has a real flying saucer. Of course that stuff spreads around. These are a bunch of science nerds, and they watch stuff like the X-Files. But no, there is nothing more than a chemical plant and some part production for various aircraft. The only really ultra-secret thing at Dreamland is the security system itself. When I said the 1/3 doesn't know about the other 2/3, that's a phrase I overheard one of the private security guys say to a military guy. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I have seen the black bulletproof SUVs that seem to have nothing to do with the desert tan Humvees that patrol the perimeter. They are all separated from each other. The guys in one type of camo don't ever talk to the guys in the other type of camo. Maybe it's a Planet of the Apes situation where they just work for competing contractors, so there is a weirdness between them. Maybe paranoia. Maybe they don't ever get told who the other guys are, and are just told not to ask questions. I just know we aren't allowed to talk to them, except for in an emergency, and they are not allowed to talk to us. Nugs of Wisdom, A's Edition. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of talk about the aliens, and I wanted to clear the air. Take my word for what it is, or don't. Call me a schizo, or don't. Y'all are a good bunch, and I've enjoyed seeing your various takes these last few months. I've also been here long enough to know not to waste my time proving my legitimacy or not. You're smart. You wouldn't be here if you weren't, so use your critical thinking skills. By the way, Antarctica is not what you think it is. Anyways, I'm bored, and our latest contract just got recommended to the Chile unit. All that to say, gather around kiddos. Papa's got a story to tell. What we all consider A's are really a mix of angels, abominations, and the rancid vestiges of a corrupt lineage. The angels can be classified as follows: Fallen, Watchers, and Sentinels. Watchers and Sentinels garner the most mainstream attention, but neither pose any threat or security concern to humans. Encounters with the latter two entities have been occurring since man took his first breath. UFOs, Battle of LA, DC Lights, Tic Tac, all examples. For security reasons, I won't comment on the state of their tech, but we have managed to reverse engineer a good bit of it. Yes, the US government has publicly viewable patents for anti-grav engines and aircraft. There's a slick new birdie they've got prototyped, but pilot mortality rate is still higher than COVID survival rate. Moving on, fallen angels, cliché as they may sound, exist both in the shadows and among us, disguised as humans, though often coexisting with a host in a waking possession state. You've seen many of these, though you didn't know it. The fallen do pose a threat, but not at the deepest level. They are simply pawns in the game, and will ultimately face their own fate when the clock runs out. The abominations are a spiritual representation of all humanity's worst fears and deepest longings. Sprites, ghouls, goblins, and jinn all fall under this category. Messenger entities, often puppeteered by one of the great mysterious forces. These entities are most likely to interfere in daily human life, but rarely cause much of a stir. Bear in mind, that all these entities neither want to be seen nor known by humans, save on rare occasion. Lastly are the spliced, the cursed, and the forgotten. Though unclassifiable as specific genetic beings, these hybrids are rather the byproduct of millennia-old mating and tradition between various humans, entities listed, and other demigods unlisted. Nephilim would be one example of such entity. No, technically they are not still around, but their legion lives on. Humans are the subject of all these observers, and that's what they are, observers. Here to observe us, since before we were even here. They observe, and they report, and they occasionally get a little too involved. But what they aren't is some intergalactic invading alien force, like BB would have you believe. They've always been observed and recorded, though by different names, since time immemorial. Remember, when did the concept of outer space aliens specifically arise? Pretty recent, huh? Also coincidental that almost overnight, the idea of the little green spaceman became a staple of mainstream culture. If you have ears to listen, do, because this is the God-given truth, a prophecy, if you will. Do not fear them. Do not interact with them. I have, and they fear humans, and wish not to interact with us, but there are some things that you don't even want to play with. Remember, these are beings with potential for great power, only restricted by the laws of the earth, but their more and more frequent interjection into mainstream news and culture, heightening to near incessant levels in recent years, is undoubtedly a signal of the next step in the Cabal's plan. Signs and wonders will provide spectacle to the sheep, but they are but phony parlor tricks. Heed my words, young man. A day soon is coming that will change everything. Will you be ready? July is when it happens. Be me. Get really into the scene of occult/X-related Discord servers, having used the SuckGen server as a jumping off point. Join as many as I can out of curiosity. Naturally, get to know people, many of whom are total schizos. Pay the latter group no mind at first, but eventually start talking with one after my DMs are continually flooded. Man claims to be married to an astral being, and due to me having propped myself up as a psychic in our mutual server, he asks if he can send her over so that I can see her. Decide what the hell. Tell him I'll do him one better and get out the EMF meter. Surprisingly, the thing spikes into the red several times and takes on a consistent yellow in between. Send him confirmation. Bad idea.jpg. Schizo with the ghost wife continues to spam my DMs over the next few weeks, apparently now thinking of me as a kind of family friend between him and the ghost. Repeatedly sends the thing over, and I start seeing weird stuff. Finally catch a glimpse of this thing out of the corner of my eye one day. Resembles what you would call a shadow person. Think pic related, but female. Tell the thing, in no short order, to fuck off. Literally, that's what I said. I've been getting pretty sick of the spooky stuff over the last few days. It obliges. Get DM'd angrily the next day by Schizo. Tells me I hurt her feelings. Have to justify myself in occult jargon as to why I didn't take kindly to the visits. Schizo and Ghost Woman agree to respect my personal space more from now on. Still see the damn thing occasionally when Schizo gets uppity on Discord. Regularly sends it to me so that I can get a timestamped EMF reading so that he can prove to other nutters that he is screwing a succubus. That face when I oblige out of inexplicable obligation. I've got more stories of nutty people I've met online that I've translated into the real world, X-tier stuff, if anyone wants to hear. So, a little background on this one. Around 2016, a Final Fantasy house-esque cult was making threads on X in an attempt to draw in recruits. I won't specify their name, but old users will remember this one. Stumble upon one of these threads, promising eternal bliss to those that offer up their souls to the leader. Dig into the doctrine of this cult. Members believe they are emissaries of a sort of interdimensional faction of super beings, succubi to be exact. And nuns are calling for someone to remote view the realm of these entities. Up to the task. Do so. After a good hour in deep trance, return with an extensive description of a Kuma's paradise, but not before getting shot at by the damn things. Report back. Not much happens until the thread dies. Then another one pops up, still recruiting members. At this point, the OP begins acting more overtly cult leader-ish. Launch another expedition to where they had previously not let me reach. Stumble into an utter horror show, complete with slaves and all manner of degeneracy one would expect from the psychic projection of a sex cult leader. Report back. Next thing I know, I'm in a companion thread dedicated to bringing these guys down. Join a Discord server of fellow schizos before the thread is nuked. Coordinate shitposting efforts in the cult's recruiting thread and participate in full-scale astral warfare against the enemy. The next day, a thread comes up dedicated to a permanent binding ritual against these entities the cult is devoted to. After that, no more recruiting threads. Up until now, I've just been shitposting and meditating with scenes of Doom Guy playing in my head. I assumed that I would never hear from this organization ever again. Oh, how wrong I was. Fast forward 4 years later. Member of dozens of freaky Discord servers dedicated to X-related topics. Begin picking up whispers of the aforementioned cult, and, more importantly, its leader. Intrigued.gif. Begin exploring the realm of Kuma occultists. Meet a lot of strange people, and befriend many more. One day, out of the blue, be messaged by one of these friends, an apparent NEET who I managed to convince he was a vampire. Another story. Friend enlists my aid, as his friend has apparently been brainwashed by this aforementioned cult leader. Where have I heard this name? Recognized the cult from 4 years ago, agreed to help. First attempt to infiltrate the organization myself. No dice. The vetting process is in place, and the leader sniffs me out every time. Try talking with the subject of the deprogramming to learn more about the cult's beliefs and learn about the leader's hold over his members. Apparently, many want to leave, but he has somehow managed to convince them that he can reshape their souls, condemn them to hell, and all manner of weird stuff. Subject wants to leave, but is legitimately scared of this guy. get into contact with an actual, professional, anti-cult activist via Discord, an ex-Jehovah's Witness, now YouTuber, known as Telltale. Not our guys, but an expert in the subject. He and his friends on the server give me an impromptu coaching on deprogramming occultists. His suggestion is to locate and target the root of their devotion. In this case, it is friends' fear of supernatural retribution. Tell subject the story above, about how I sort of dabbed on the cult, and never faced any retribution at all, and that the same was true of several people. Managed to convince him that the leader was more bark than bite. Have yet to hear from him since, but me and vampire friend apparently both suffered half-assed attempts at curses since then. Friend saw aid from a local psychic. I lifted until the curse itself was gone.